Hello, everyone, and welcome back to From the Stands. This is the penultimate episode of the 2024-25 season of the College Football Game Day Show. My name is Brian McCardle. On top of me, yet again, it is Andy Hopper, as always, and below me in this vertical screen is Mr. Tom Scavetta. Only 2 games on the card this week, boys, but we had 4 very interesting games this week because all 4 of the underdog teams did win. So we're going to jump into a short weekly, we'll call it our news segment of the week, and it's Rest versus Rust. Like I said, we saw all top 4 teams who had the bye get taken down by the teams that had been in action, weren't waiting on the sideline. So, Andy, I'll start with you because this was something you brought up right after the games in our private chat. And it is a super interesting concept here because of the way that the byes are given out. So, what are your thoughts here on number 5, 6, 7, and 8, taking down 1, 2, 3, and 4 here?
Yeah, I think the way that this playoff has been seeded does also have something to do with that. It's a topic we touched on last week. Penn State. I'm sorry, Boise State and Arizona State both getting the bye, yet they were both substantial underdogs going into the game. Arizona State, wow, gave Texas everything they could handle. Shout out to Cam Scattaboo, just like an all-time college football playoff performance. But as far as the rest versus rust thing, I think it is something that you have to look at. I mean, these teams are taking a month off of game action, and then they are, coming into the playoff, right? The highest level of competition and where they need to be at their best. We saw Ashton Jeanty fumble the ball a couple times. Oregon just couldn't seem to get right at all versus Ohio State. And wow, that might have been the most shocking performance of the playoffs so far. But I'm not sure, because obviously, they have a certain number of practices that they can get in the 3 weeks that they have off. But I don't know, those teams that, had that game under the belt seemed like they had a little bit of momentum, were feeling good about themselves. There's something to be said with that. But I think a mixture of, the seeding, the schedule would be why we saw some of those results. But I don't know. It almost makes you not want to buy, as crazy as that sounds.
Right. Yeah, Tom, what are your thoughts here? Because, your team was one of those teams that had to play in that first round there as the number 5 seed. You get Georgia, who, number 2, they're missing their starting quarterback, but they've just been sitting around waiting for you guys, essentially. So, obviously, you take care of Indiana. Very good game by you guys. And then, you're basically rolling into Georgia, on your high horses, as you should be, because you played a hell of a game, and it seemed to benefit you guys.
True, but also remember Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference championship game. So while this was a direct hit to us, Georgia did play the SEC title game while we had off. So we went a while. We went almost a month from our last game against USC to our first CFP game on December 20th, I believe it was, against Indiana. And that was a Friday night game. So we also sort of dealt with that situation. I get what you guys are saying. But what we don't need is Kirby Smart coming out and saying, by the way, we should consider going back to a 14 playoff. And by the way, God rest his father's soul. Very, very sad story. If you guys take a look at it, we wish nothing but the best for their family. But it's definitely a tough situation as far as the Oregon-Ohio State example. Yeah, Oregon just came out flat. Like, the game was not even close. It was a 1-point game a few months ago when they played, and for them to get blown out like that, it was embarrassing to watch. I mean, and not to talk about it from a fan perspective, but there's people that lost a lot of money on this game. Like, Ohio State went from getting booted by Michigan to looking like the best team in the nation. There's definitely a scheduling problem with college football this season, and don't get me wrong, it's a figuring out process year by year, right? Times are changing. NIL is in full swing. The transfer portal is ever growing. And there's players that are constantly, switching teams every year. So you could make a lot of different arguments here with this. I do think there's some truth to rust for these 2 teams. But as far as Notre Dame and Georgia was concerned, that's definitely not the reason why we beat Georgia. I mean, we beat Georgia because we were the better team on the field and we were more prepared. I mean, think about it. Georgia.
Me and Brian picked him to win. We know.
Thanks. You had to throw that in there, right? It's like, but oh my God, way to really throw me under there, Andy. If you folks could watch the last show, watch what I said. But to wrap this point up, so we could keep the wheels moving here, the Boise State, Arizona State, that's going to have to change. They can't be getting buys. It's going to have to be a situation where, like, the best 4 teams really do deserve the buys because of the way conferences are aligned. So that's something to keep note for the future. But yes, rust was definitely a factor here overall.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, mostly what I have written down is your last point there. But I'll start by saying what was interesting to me. I think everyone knew some of these games were going to be obviously not super competitive. Boise State, not that they're a one-trick pony, but so much production coming from G&T, and then you've got them sitting on the sidelines, just going up against a super good Penn State team who gets that warm-up game against SMU. They were looking for trouble pretty much the entire. I thought Arizona State held their own very, very well. I thought they
Yeah,
were
I mean, they
honestly.
took them to overtime. They had a 4th and 13 that
Yeah,
they get a stop on that. We're talking about them playing Ohio State.
yeah, I honestly thought they were the better team in that game. That is why you play the game. You can't win them all, even if you are the better team.
Right.
But yeah, what I thought was interesting was that of the favorites in these first 8 games of the playoffs so far, all the teams with the worst seeds were those favorites to win the game, and they ended up 8-0 on money line, and were 6-2 even against the spread. So it's one of those things where like nobody was really fooled. Yeah, you're the higher seed, you got the bye, but Vegas wasn't fooled, fans weren't fooled. We kind of saw this coming. But yeah, based on Tom's last point, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on just really briefly. For me, this kind of solidifies that they should have either done 8 teams, which was my argument all of last year, because I don't like only some teams getting a bye. I know NFL does that, but for these college kids, to me, it's a little bit different. So I think it either should have been 8, or if they want to stick with 12, they just need to give those buys to the raw top 4, not the top 4 conference winners. If you are top 4 on the board, via the committee, or however that ends up going these next couple of years, if they stick with committee or go back to some sort of BCS hybrid system, if you're top 4, you get the buys. No one who's ranked number 8 in one conference is going to skip up into the top 4 like Boise and just get hammered. So yeah, just briefly, I thought it was an interesting topic, well brought up by Andy there after those games. We'll see what they do. I know the wheels seem to be turning as far as editing how they're going to do seeds coming up, but we will jump into the only 2 games we have left this week. It is Penn State, number 6, taking on number 7, Notre Dame, first in the Orange Bowl. This is our January 9th game. It's at 7:30. We got a night game for you in Miami here, Tom. We will start with you. This is your team coming off a really solid win here. So give us your take on this game.
Yeah, look, there's a lot to take away from the Georgia game. The Irish stopped the run, only allowed 66 yards for the day. That's under 2.5 yards per carry. They sacked Gunnar Stockton 4 times and forced 2 turnovers in this game. Again, no Riley Mills, no problem. Howard Cross, however, did leave with an injury, so that left Notre Dame really shorthanded, and they still had 9 TFLs. Marcus Freeman and defensive coordinator, specifically Al Golden, deserve their flowers for the way they handled this Bulldogs offense, even without Carson Beck. And it starts Adon Schuler with that forced fumble early when UGA is driving. Boom, goes right for the football. Notre Dame recovers. Xavier Watts was locked down all game. I thought Jack Kaiser was good outside of the PI he had there where he didn't turn for the football. Georgia's left tackle was horrendous. Junior Tua Halabaka was beaten Freeling all game long, and then Donovan Heinisch with the game-winning sack. I mention all these stats because these are the reasons why Notre Dame won this football game and why they're at the point that they are now. They don't need Riley Leonard to do all this stuff. Yeah, he put his body on the line. He only threw for 90 yards. Notre Dame wins football games. You don't have a quarterback who throws 300 yards every week to win football games, especially at the college level. Jeremiah Love only had 6-7 touches the entire game. Notre Dame still won. We thought he was going to be a huge factor in this game. Marcus Freeman did a phenomenal job emphasizing the run game. Mike Denbrock, excellent play calling. Look, Jadarian Price, nobody talks about him. He's very capable of leading the Irish backfield. 720 yards and 7 scores on the season. And they have capable weapons, right? Bo Collins, Jordan Faison, and tight end Mitchell Evans, who's been banged up this year. Now, on the surface here, when we look at the Orange Bowl and the history between Penn State and Notre Dame's favored by 2. Obviously, they beat a huge opponent. Penn State did not. All-time series tied 9-1, and these 2 teams last met in 2007. Now, for the fun fact for people who are maybe not sure who to pick in this game, Notre Dame strives on 2 things. An old-school physical mentality. They love to establish the run and stop the run. That's how they win football games. And secondly, their closeness together as a program and their faith. Marcus Freeman has proved he's an elite head coach, and there's something special about Notre Dame head coaches in their 3rd year. Brian Kelly in his 3rd year in 2012, national runner-up. Lou Holtz in his 3rd year, national champion. Dan Devine, national champion. Ara Parsigan, national champion. Frank Leahy, national champion, all in their third years of coaching Notre Dame. So there is something to note here. When I look at Penn State in their last game against Boise State, what did they do well? They really ran through the teeth of that Boise State defense. They had 216 yards on the ground. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton complement each other so well, each of them averaging over 7 yards per carry. And of course, my guy, tight end Tyler Warren, with 2 touchdown receptions in this game. And Drew Aller, yeah, he threw 3 touchdowns, but he didn't have to throw the ball that much. He only threw the ball 25 times. Why? Because defensively, Penn State controlled the line of scrimmage. They held Ashton Jeanty to 104 yards. So it is concerning, right? If they held Jeanty to 104 yards, you would think, well, maybe Notre Dame might have some trouble. Problem is, Notre Dame has better offensive linemen than Boise State does. Penn State has better, I think, guys up front than Georgia did this season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. They sacked Madsen 3 times. They forced 3 picks and 4 Boise State turnovers. It's going to be tough because we've criticized Riley Leonard a lot. And I'm not going to sit here and act like Riley Leonard's this all-pro quarterback. But Mike Denbrock has unlocked on how to get the most out of Riley Leonard to make him look really, really good. And that's going to be key in this game. Look, Notre Dame stopped the run against Georgia. I can see this defense making Drew Aller uncomfortable, and you want to make him uncomfortable, and you do that by stopping the 2,001-yard rushers that they have. Finally, the X factor is Tyler Warren. Al Golden must devise a defensive game plan to contain him. Xavier Watts has 6 picks on the season. He's played against tight ends a little bit. Drake Bowen, very important player to watch on defense as well. He's capable of coming up, stopping the run, blitzing the quarterback, and dropping back into coverage. Both of those 2 guys will have extremely important roles in covering this nation's best tight end this season, in my opinion. The difference maker and the pick. Penn State lacks discipline at times. 10 penalties in their game against Boise State. Notre Dame is the more disciplined team, the slightly better offensive line, and in my opinion, they have the better defense. I'm going with the Fighting Irish to advance to the national championship game, and I think they'll cover that current 2-point spread.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, so I don't know how much more I can add to that after
yet again, right?
yet again. For the Notre Dame game, we just let Tom cook and just let him go. So yeah, I mean, if we talk about what happened last round, Penn State lost Abdul Carter pretty early in the game against Boise State, and they really didn't lose a step, which was scary. They held Ashton Jeanty to less than 4 yards per carry, and he really just couldn't get going. Tom, you mentioned that he had 104 yards. I think he still carried the ball 28 or 29 times in that game. So Penn State just dominated the trenches. I'll give Boise State's defense a little bit of credit. They were able to get pressure on Aller and speed him up a little bit, but they just could not stop the run, like you said. And, that has to be a little bit concerning for Notre Dame if you just look at the way that these 2 guys have been able to run the football this year, and then especially recently they've been on an absolute tear. I think that's what both of these teams want to do. It's going to be a grinded out, who is going to win the line of scrimmage, right? In my opinion. So it looks like Abdul Carter is back for Penn State in this game. I'm not really even sure what happened to him in that game, but he's a player to watch for me. Riley Leonard on the other side of the ball. I like what you said earlier, Tom, about, he didn't really have to do it with his arm against Georgia, but he's just so big. He's so athletic, and he can hurt you with his legs too. So I look for him to be a big part of what Notre Dame tries to do on Thursday night. This is a really tough one. Jeremiah Love, are they going to get him going? You have Price that's proven, he could probably go anywhere else and be a lead back. He's that talented. And then Tyler Warren, another guy on the Penn State side that you talk about a tight end that is that athletic and has that much body control when he's going up and making these insane catches in the end zone or whether it's for a first down. You don't see that very often. You have 2 really good tight ends in the draft this year in Warren and Harold Fannin. So really excited to see where those guys end up. But as far as this game on Thursday, Notre Dame team of destiny. Give me the Irish.
All right. My big question mark last week was, of course, Drew Aller. He's been a bit of a project in the works, I'll say, but he did have quite a good game. Not great, but he had 13.8 yards per passing attempt against that Boise State defense. That's the highest in his career, and all 3 of his touchdowns came on throws that were past 10 yards. So that was one of the things I was a bit concerned about, the long ball, his arm, not specifically his strength, but the accuracy when he goes long. But he did fairly well. We talked these past few days about NFL scouts. Someone here brought this up, saying that he could be a top QB pick in the draft. I'm not entirely seeing it. Like I said, he had a good game, but not a great game. He played smart, didn't force any egregious errors, but still, he only went 13 for 25, which, yeah, they didn't need him to throw more than that. That's still only a 52% completion percentage there, and that was for just 171 yards. On top of that, his O-line has allowed him to get sacked 7 times in the past 2 games. If your O-line's going to, leave your QB that vulnerable in these big-time games, they need to be a lot more mobile, a lot more accurate than Aller if you want to have success there. Like we just talked about James Franklin saying Abdul Carter, it's a bit up in the air, but, kind of given the wink wink, like just don't want to say it publicly. But yeah, it looks like he will be playing. I thought he was going to be a huge factor in that Boise State game. He does go and get a left arm injury, is what it is, Andy. I didn't see the exact play.
They didn't even show it. Like they were just,
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, oh, hey, by the way, Abdul Carter's on the sideline. He's probably not coming back in. It's like, oh.
Yeah, there was
massive player.
Yeah.
there was nothing, that kind of indicated a huge injury happened, which I guess, maybe it was precautionary. They thought, all right, we're looking okay in this game. Let's rest and make sure he's good for the next game. If things maybe got out of hand or were a little bit closer, maybe they would have put him back in for that game. But he did get a little bit of rest there. The rest of the D-line was good. They were limited in the amount of pressure they were able to get on the QB. They did have 3 sacks, but that was a game where I thought they were going to rattle off maybe 1 sack per drive against a pretty weak Boise State O-line there. The rest of the O-line, like you said, they were able to stop G&T, but they just kind of lacked that extra closing speed that Carter has to actually get to Madsen and get those sacks on the board there. Obviously, having their best edge rusher back is going to be a massive boost for them and to morale in this upcoming game. Penn State, 4th in the nation against the run. They've allowed just 100.4 yards per game on the ground. They got to go up against quite a deal here for Notre Dame, though. They weren't able to keep G&T under 100. They got pretty damn close. But, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, 2 very, very good backs here. They did struggle a little bit in their game, but Georgia, very tough defense. They put up combined 56 rushing yards on 16 carries. I think they're going to have a little bit of an easier time here, hopefully. But as far as Notre Dame goes, defense did not falter at all at any point against Georgia. They looked really, really good. I know Beck was out. You got a backup QB, but they looked super, super solid. They went into that game with an already impressive 13.8 points per game given up, and then allowed Georgia to score just 10. So they improved on that with only a field goal given up in the entirety of the second half. The offense, you guys did take a little while to get going, I'll say. Only 6 points in the first half until that, defensive stay on that turnover with, was 30 seconds or something, 20 seconds left. And then, Leonard was able to convert there. But yeah, I do have to disagree with Tom on one point here before I wrap this up. Riley Leonard, you said he doesn't really have to do it all, but that game he kind of did have to do it all. To some extent, he accounted for obviously all 90 of the 90 passing yards, then had 80 of the 156 rushing yards. So, that's 69, very nice. 0.1% of the offensive production there. If they want to win this game, if they, absolutely need to win this game, as they should, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, they're going to need to get some production of their own there because, I love that Leonard can take off on his feet. It provides that extra weapon, that extra option, but it can get dangerous when you're playing a really good defense. You take an injury and the whole game flips on its head. So you want to know that he can run, but you don't want him running a ton if I'm Notre Dame. I think this is going to be a very close game, very low scoring, but I think Tommy's Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to come out on top here. And you know what? I was going to do both predictions at the end, but since we're on the game, there's only 2. Let's run through predictions on a per game basis. So Tom, I'll start with you. What do you think is going to be the final score here, given who you picked?
Look, I don't hate Riley Leonard. I like him. I do. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game because of the way both these 2 teams play. We're going to see a score similar to the Georgia game, except I think a little bit closer. Notre Dame, Mitch Jeter's back, an awesome special teams unit. Give me a final score of Notre Dame 24, Penn State 20.
Okay. There's some points on the board there. Andy, what are your thoughts on the score line here?
Yeah, I have Notre Dame 28, Penn State 24.
Points there as well. All right. Mine is going to be a bit more of a boring game here. I think, honestly, the winning team comes out of this game with 13 to 17 points tops. If this is an on-campus game, I think this game is maybe 6 to 9. But the fact that it is down here in Florida, I'm going to go... This puts it really close. but I'm going to go 13-9 Notre Dame here. Penn State kept out of the end zone and is left with just 3 field goals.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tom likes that one or if it's...
He really hates Drew Aller. I guess you can keep the MC to your last name, right?
Yeah. No, I think this is going to be a huge defensive battle, so I'm keeping it low, but, you guys both went high, so if I get embarrassed, at least both of you will be right here. But moving on to the next game, we have number 5 Texas taking on number 8 Ohio State, who maybe looks like the front runner to win it all after that Oregon whooping there. It is the Cotton Bowl, 7:30 p.m. on January 10th. Andy, runs through your thoughts on this game here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at who's been the most impressive in the playoffs so far, I think Ohio State's at the top of that list. I think Notre Dame's up there as well. But if we're talking about the Buckeyes, it's Will Howard and that connection to Jeremiah Smith. Look for him to get the ball early and often. They're going to take deep shots down the field. They have so many weapons, whether it's Smith, whether it's Agbuka, their third receiver's fucking Cardinal Tate. And you have Travion Henderson. You have in the backfield with Quinshon Judkins. There's so many different ways they can hurt you on the defensive side of the ball. They have Jack Sawyer, who's been there for what feels like forever, leading that group, who was really good against Oregon and caused a lot of havoc. You look at Texas. What does Texas do really well? They've got a great defense, and they have weapons galore on offense as well. Ewers has, so many guys that he has been able to get involved, whether it's Bolden or Bond and Blue out of the backfield. So, and then you look at their defense, and I think the most impressive guy for them defensively the past few weeks has been the Clemson transfer, Mukaba. Obviously he had that game-winning interception against Arizona State, and he's came up big a couple different times here. He had a big play against Clemson as well. But is it going to be enough? Is their defense going to be able to slow down this really, really good Ohio State offense? I'm not sure. They barely escaped against Arizona State. And hats off to Arizona State. I thought they had a great year, but I don't know if they are to the level of Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes are just going to have too much, and they move on to the national championship game.
All right, Tom, what are your thoughts here?
Let's not forget, too, although Texas has 2 losses this year, they're both to the same team. So Ryan Day has to follow the Georgia blueprint in order to beat Texas, in my opinion. And that is pressure Quinn Ewers, make him get the ball out quickly. Attack him from each end with Jack Sawyer and JT, Tua Miloau. They're both key in this game. JT with 10 sacks on the year, Sawyer with 8. Sawyer also does an excellent job of getting his hands up at the line of scrimmage. He displayed that this past week with his 2 sacks and 3 passes defended against Oregon. And this wasn't even a game, guys. Since the Michigan game, Ohio State has outscored opponents 83-38. They've more than doubled their opponent's score. Look, it's been a while since these teams met. You think of 2 marquee programs like this. The 2009 Fiesta Bowl was the last time that they met. It's going to be interesting. We talked about all the offense. They put up 500 yards of total offense against Oregon, and Will Howard looked good. Will Howard threw for 300. Jeremiah Smith, best wide receiver in the nation as a freshman. Incredible stuff. Can they stop Travion Henderson and those chunk plays on the ground, Texas? Quinshon Judkins had a couple good runs sprinkled in there as well. And defensively, guys, Cody Simon was a beast. Tyleik Williams in the run game. Defensively, the Ducks had negative 23 rushing yards. It was awful. I know they lost Jordan James, but my gosh, how is Texas going to be able to run the football if you want to take pressure off of Quinn Ewers, right? Keep him out of 3rd and long. Texas avoided a huge upset. They had to convert, 4th and goal from the 17 or something like that.
It was like 4th and 13 or something.
It was nuts. And then that beautiful throw and catch to Matt Golden, it saved their season. Ewers was not good. The Horns had just 53 rushing yards against ASU. If you have 53 rushing yards against ASU, you may not get that many against Ohio State. And not to mention, I know Scadaboo's good, but the Longhorns themselves, on the other end of the trenches, allow the Sun Devils to run for 214 yards. Guys, this is a major problem. They can get to the quarterback. That's not the problem, right? You got Anthony Hill Jr., Colin Simmons defensively, Trey Moore and Barron Sorrell. Those are your 4 premier edge rushers, or pass rushers, I should say. A couple of those are inside linebackers. But, they're, unfortunately for Texas, I think their strength of the defense is the back 7, right? Andy mentioned Mukaba before. Jade Barron as well with those 5 picks. Michael Taffy. Those are good DBs. The problem is, what do they have up front, right? They lost Devondre Sweat to the draft this past year. Ethan Burke has sort of underachieved for them. So all in all, how are they going to stop Henderson and Judkins on the ground? They're not going to be able to. And what does that do? That opens up the pass game to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and even Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate is an X factor in this game, boys, over the middle of the field. I think he's going to have a really, really good game. Texas has to stay ahead of the sticks. Don't allow Ohio State to unlock their pass rushers consistently, and those Texas DBs have to get their hands full against Jeremiah Smith and Ohio State's weapons. It's not going to be enough. Ohio State and Ryan Day advance to the national championship game, and they cover the spread. That hurts. Hurts, man. I mean, I don't want to see them, but it hurts so much. You got to give a team credit where credit is due, even if you don't like them. That's why we sit here and we do these shows. We analyze and try to be as impartial as we are, boys. But I got to give him credit here. He's done a really good job with his team in this playoff so far.
Yeah, and I think both me and Andy can confirm to everyone at home that it definitely hurt Tom there to say that openly. But yeah, so I said last week I did not trust Will Howard yet, even after that game against Tennessee in round one. But he has now put together two very good back-to-back performances, the types of performances that you absolutely need if you want to win the CFP, especially now the expanded CFP where you have the more playoff games to go through if you want to win it all. The types of performances, absolutely solid. His throws, methodical. His hookups with Jeremiah Smith and Egbuka, they looked effortless. So just all in all, Oregon's defense, I'll say they did kind of look asleep, but you can't. That's not Ohio State's fault. Like you can't say that that's a negative against Ohio State. They went out there and they did what they needed to do. They produced. So my big concern was obviously Howard's underthrows, and he did have a few that made Smith and Egbuka, work for it, but it was mostly pretty good stuff there out of the senior QB. Another note, though, the Ohio State O-line continues to dominate in the trenches. They haven't allowed more than one sack on Howard in the last 6 straight games, and Howard has kept his jersey nice and crisp and clean in both of these playoff games so far. 0 sacks in either of those games, so they are stepping up to protect their quarterback. Can anyone stop Jeremiah Smith? Probably not. Even when Oregon was leaving a safety there over the top to just do nothing but spy Smith, he was still punishing that Oregon secondary. 5 catches for 161 yards and 2 TDs in the first half. He could have sat out the rest of the game, and they probably would have won that game handedly. If Texas decides to go all in, attempting to contain Smith in the same way to stop those big plays, that's going to open up the field there for the Buckeyes and Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. They'll be able to feast on yardage, I believe, because last week I said they weren't playing up to the standards of how at least I categorize them as kind of that elite running back pairing in college football right now. They were almost invisible the previous few games, but they stepped up. They provided 2 touchdowns and 179 yards on the ground there on just 25 carries. Obviously, it's a little one-sided, but both putting in the yards there for the Buckeyes. Texas' secondary needs to be concerned. They had a good day against Sam Leavitt in that quarterfinal game, but that Sun Devils team was trying to get that production through the air without their far and away best wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, who was not playing. On the team, he had just 3 less receptions than Arizona State's next 3 best wide receivers and tight ends combined. So, I think it's fair to say that made life a little bit easier there for that Texas secondary. For Ohio State, not only did the Buckeyes' top wide receiver, not only will he not be on the injury board, he just manhandled his way through the secondary of the number 1 team in the nation. And then even if you can mark him, you got another one out there with 10-plus receiving touchdowns in Egbuka. And then if you can mark him too, you got another there with Carnell Tate, like Andy mentioned. He's just a sophomore, but he's got 600-plus yards as well. And then my shout-out, not really a player to watch, but my shout-out for performance of the week for Ohio State, senior Buckeyes linebacker Cody Simon. Not the name we hear the most on the stacked Ohio State defense, but he had 11 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and a pass deflection, so he was all over the field. The guys we do hear about, Jack Sawyer, he was all over the place as well. 2 sacks, 3 pass deflections, and then Tui Malowau, 2 sacks and a pass deflection as well. So they're absolutely eating up the field there on defense. As far as Texas goes, it should not be ignored that Texas needed double overtime to defeat Arizona State. Like I said, I thought Arizona State was deserving of where they were. I think they deserved the bye week there out of the Big 12. But this is not Arizona State. Texas, listen, they were a very good team, but you cannot go to double overtime with that team and then expect to get past an Ohio State team that is just absolutely loaded front to back. They gave up 510 yards of offense to the Sun Devils, who outgained the Longhorns by over 125 yards there. That's not something I think many people expected. They're going to need a much bigger fight from those guys in the O-line who, despite getting that eventual win in double overtime, were not able to open up any holes for the run game between Wisner and Blue. That duo only managed 2.2 yards per carry. So this Buckeyes D-line, it's a bit of another beast here entirely. So we'll see how they hold up there. I'm not optimistic. I'll say that. I don't see this game being very pretty if the Longhorns aren't able to open up the game for Quinn Ewers' pass game with good protection on the line for that ground attack. And then you have to have some concern in the back of your head. College kickers. We haven't talked about it much this season because it hasn't been much of an issue. But Burt Auburn, that game could have been over multiple times. Those were not very difficult kicks, especially that last one. He had a horrendous game there in the quarterfinal, just 1 for 3 kicking. If you expect the game to be close, if you can keep Ohio State off the board somewhat, you got to be able to rely on your kicker. And I don't know what's going to be going through his head. That's just, almost one of those performances where you just get the yips afterwards. That's going to be in his head the entire time. I'm sure it's, people have been in his DMs tweeting at him about those missed kicks. So, yeah, you win the game, but, when it's all on the line, sometimes it comes down to the kicker. I don't think it will this game. I'm taking Ohio State here. But, if it is close, that's going to be something to watch there. Okay, we got our predictions here. Score-wise, Andy, what do you think will be the score of this game?
Ohio State 34, Texas 21.
All right, Tom, prediction for the score of this game.
Ewers throws a couple picks. Enter Arch Manning in the second half. Ohio State wins 38-27.
I love it. All right, so Cotton Bowl here. Texas, good defense. Ewers looked a little bit shaky. That whole Texas offense looked a little bit shaky there, especially in the second half. Arizona State just kind of dominated. I'm going to say it's a big win here for Ohio State. I'm going to go 31-17 Buckeyes here. And didn't put this on the card, but since we've made our picks here, we can embarrass ourselves a little or maybe look super impressive. I want to know, based on who you've picked here to win the semifinals, who you think at this moment is your favorite to win it all. Andy, I'll start with you. Based on those games, your predictions, who do you think is the front runner to take it home?
Well, after their dominating performance in the Citrus Bowl, I think Illinois should have the winner of both of these games. No, I think Ohio State's the favorite right now.
All right, Tom?
Ohio State's the most talented team, but Notre Dame is the best coached and most disciplined team. They are the closest team out of the 4 remaining, and they will win.
I love it.
Potentially. We'll see what happens this week. But I think I have faith after last Thursday. I have faith.
Good. I love the turnaround there from not even picking Notre Dame against Georgia to going all the way. I think if it's Ohio State Notre Dame in the final, that's going to be a close one as well. But right now, I think I just have to give the edge to Ohio State just because of how that game looked. Obviously, Notre Dame's defense looked super good against Georgia, but that Ohio State offense was just incredible. So that is going to wrap up our show, wrap up the semifinal predictions and analysis. Enjoy the games on the 9th and the 10th. And as always, you can expect us back here for our final show of the 2024-25 season as we do crown a national champion after our national championship preview and analysis show. So thank you for joining us. Down in the description, find the links for my boys Andy and Tom's shows. That is the Brew Party for Andy and Review and Preview for Tom. My name is Brian McCardle, Andy Hopper, Tom Scavetta, bringing it to you once again